Welcome, welcome to Mending Threads. This is your safe place and your stronghold for whole body wellness. This is a transformation series, and today we're going to look at changing culture, changing education, changing culture. And we're going to look at those dynamics. And if we're very, very fortunate today, we'll also have another person to join us. But we do have our co host, Doc Walker, and if he could come on. And Doc Walker is well known by you. And I wanted to say that he is also the associate pastor of the Shrine of the Black Madonna. And his experiences, he's been a professor. He is a professor. He's an author, and he's an editor. And he'll tell us a little bit more about what he's doing on the paper and all of that, because we want to know a little bit more about that as it relates to culture and education. So we want to talk because there's a lot going on in the news, and we have observed a lot that's going on in education and the changing culture. And so they're connected, and there's a dynamic force that's going on. And so if anybody knows anything, we know that Dr. Oswald Walker will know. And the other thing is, we're going to put a little pressure on him because we know that he wrote this book, Stand Your Ground, and I'm reading on it. And I love his writing style. And I want to see how he would apply concepts that he has in this book. This is the book. And how that would relate to what we do. Okay?
Wow.
So yes, sir. So I would like to know more about what's upcoming and what are you doing as it relates to culture and education in your writing for the paper.
So I'm the associate editor, and one of my jobs is to check out the news and make assignments. And so we don't have a big staff, although I think we do a Herculean job. But everyone has like their specialties. And so I try to make sure I'm giving everyone assignments that fit them. But everyone has Black folks' interests at heart. And so I love the way, like we have Laura Onyenaho. She's a Report for America reporter. She's our education reporter. So she's from Nigeria. So she brings that flavor, and she's under 40, and she focuses on education, but she also focuses on Gen Z, the young folk. And then we have Rashonda Tate, who is internationally known, award-winning writer, director, and producer of movies, and still honors us by working with the Defender. And she worked in media for decades as a reporter on Fox 26 and other places. So she brings a wealth of that, but it's always, how is this helping Black people? And she has a channel on our website, the Black Women's Channel. So any issue impacting Black women, she's going to cover. I'm always focused on community and culture and issues of justice. And so when you ask like what's going on, or how do we impact culture through our writing at the paper, I think that's how, because we bring ourselves to the table. But it's always, I'm so thankful that I work with people who are not disconnected from our people. Very connected, very invested. And it starts from the top, Sunny Messiah Giles, the owner of the paper, the publisher. She preaches all the time, we can't just write stories that talk about the problem. We have to offer our people solutions.
There you go.
Because it's easy to talk about a problem.
Yes.
And so in that way, she reminds me of you, because you always, we don't close out a show without giving people something they can take with them in order to move closer to a better outcome. And that's how Sunny challenges us every time we write a story. And so I think what I'm trying to say is, it's a job, but I feel like I'm working with family, and it feels more like a calling. And so,
Yes.
my wife was like, "Man, you're always working," but I absolutely love what I'm doing because I see that it's not just. I mean,
It's not a job.
right?
It's a living. In other words, not a living because you're earning money. You engage in what you're
Yeah,
doing because it is the living. You
yeah,
see. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, and in that way, and in many others, I count myself amazingly blessed because we all have
Hmm.
to get out there and make money to keep a roof over our head and food on the table and all that. But I've had the opportunity
Hmm.
to do something that also allows me to empower and
Hmm.
uplift not only myself but the community. And so I'm
Hmm.
real appreciative of that.
Very good. So what I wanted to do is I wanted you are very informed about some key strategies have occurred, and what have you written about this new situation about here? I wanted to know a little bit about how you think education itself is interacting today
Yeah.
with cultural changes. Hmm.
So the big issue here in Houston right now is the potential takeover of HISD by TEA, the Texas Education Agency. Texas Education Agency is talking about taking over the state's largest independent school district and the eighth largest in the entire nation. Um, and so I covered different protest rallies. And so I've heard all of the arguments in terms of why TEA needs to back the
Hmm.
hell up. Just yesterday, I actually interviewed um, a prominent community leader who is for the TEA takeover. So I found that really interesting. And so the way I conducted that interview is every point that I heard from the protest, or that I
Yes.
believe myself, I said, okay, so this is the reason why folk are saying we don't need it. Why do you say otherwise? And so I thought it was a whole lot of food for thought, and I love that dynamic. And I think Black folk we need to take all of that in.
Yes.
But the things that stood out to me in terms of just the whole TEA takeover thing, I equate that with what's going on nationally. There's always been a move to defund public education because, we celebrate Brown versus the Board of Education, the 1954 decision, but no one talks about the fact that white folk lost their damn minds and literally in cities and states all across the South, they changed laws and they took our tax dollars out of public schools and channel them to what folk call segregation schools. A whole lot of churches during that time were built with schools as a part of the church so that those white folk who did not want their children going to school with black children could have a fully funded education, and they didn't have to go to school with black. In some cities, they literally closed public schools for up to 2 to 3 years. That's how committed they were to not sending their children to school with us. So no one talks about the fact that, I mean, the whole move to defund public education is ancient. It's been going on for decades. And so
Hmm.
that's one of the first things I thought about when I heard about this TEA takeover. That's just another step in these white folk, trying to make sure that their children are being educated while ours are being left
And I
behind.
want the audience to know it is just a certain group of white people, not all, because some of them really see. And I have some that are talking to me about, and that's how we came up with something. We didn't know how to put the title, but some that were saying what they're concerned about is how all this relates to the justice system and
And
what's
and
getting ready to happen. And the
and to that point, when I was covering the protest that was in front of the HISD building, you had representatives from the Black community, the Latinx community, the union, the workers community, clergy, politicians, and it was it was literally the diversity of the city of Houston standing right
Right,
there in
right.
front.
Hmm.
So you're right. There's a whole lot of people that see this, and the way I saw it was as connected to what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi right now,
Hmm.
where in the middle of percentage wise, Mississippi is the blackest state in the union. Jackson, Mississippi, percentage wise, is the blackest city.
Oh
In
yeah, I didn't know
Jackson,
that.
Mississippi,
Uh-huh.
they have created like this little enclave, like the white area of Jackson. Within that enclave, they're creating an entirely different court system that then chooses all the judges and all the prosecutors, but they are not privy to or held accountable to the same laws as the black people in Jackson. And so you have all these white Republican state elected officials telling you who's going to be the judges. You don't get to elect them anymore. So it's literally an apartheid system right there in the blackest state, in the blackest city in the country. And so you have that going on. And then in Tennessee, you had this Republican lawmaker who is trying to reinstate lynching as a legal means of public education. And then in the state of Florida, which Lord have mercy, Florida is already insanely crazy. You have a governor that's making these hostile takeovers of universities that are all about diversity and just the making it illegal basically to be about diversity and equity and inclusion. And that's going on here in Texas too at the same
Yes,
time. So all these things are connected,
they are
which is why
connected.
this is not just about education. It is about justice. It is about equality. It is about democracy. And those forces, those minority forces, when I say minority, I mean uh, the white nationalist forces moving to create an apartheid system in the United States. Because they see, we've talked about it before, they see the demographics of this country changing, and there's nothing they can do about it. Every single day, the
Hmm.
United States gets younger, darker, and more progressive because black and brown people are having more babies, white folk are not, and white people, um, elder white folk, are dying off faster. And so the country is getting more diverse, darker, more progressive every single day. And so you see this mad rush to hold on to power, to squash black and brown votes, to do anything possible to maintain their power reality. And I'm sorry for preaching for.
No, that no, you're making a lot of sense. And see, you're helping the audience not only think of things in concrete situations, because usually we see this, but we're not conceptualizing how when they make an announcement um, of a takeover, that actually around the world, that not that it's a Democrat, Republican, or whatever, but I understand that they're primarily all Republican states mostly, that have done the takeovers or are doing the takeovers of the school district. But it seems that then, in my understanding from reading this little information that was sent, is that when you do that, you dictate what is taught and what is going on in the school, and so therefore you can withdraw or put in anything that you want the group of people to understand or read. And so now that's bring on an impact on our families, on how we perceive politics, how we engage, and also how certain people or other people are trained, police
You are so
officers and whatever. It's gonna be interesting, and it is interesting.
it's not only interesting, Dr. Lewis. It's downright scary. Um,
Scary.
in I think it was Alabama, um, a high school in Alabama. The students did a protest. They walked out of school because the administrators of this campus, which is like I think 80 some odd percent black, and they only 80-90% black, and they only had 5 black administrators in the entire school. But um, the administrators, predominantly white administrators, said that they could not have their they would have to. edit their Black History Month program because um, the one of the administrators felt uncomfortable when they were going to talk about the civil rights movement and slavery. Well, damn. I mean,
Everything you look around, that's what it is.
you made me think about that when you talked about how now we're at a point where we're empowering people to just say, well, I don't like this, it makes me feel bad, and so you can't teach this in a classroom. um, Education, the teaching of history is not supposed to be a feel good experience. It's supposed to be learning the good, the bad, and the ugly
The truth,
from the
the truth.
past so that
Closest to
we
the
can
truth that you can get.
so that we can be better informed in our present
Right.
and be equipped to create the kind of future that we want. But we're and what is maddening to me is the system has already been whitewashed. I mean, what we're getting in the public school system is already a watered down, whitewashed version of history, of the arts, of all
Hmm.
those things. And now you have people that coming in and trying to whitewash it even more.
Even more.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know, man. You got me on a bad day.
See, well, no. Well, see, one, here's the point. Here's the point. Everybody's like, why talk about this? The thing about, one, you have persons that is affecting negatively. The other is when you look at healing things, until we everything tells us, until you bring things into the moment and clearly look at the focus, harmony is far away. That in order to bring and get rid of stereotypes and myths and racism and injustice and things like that, until we really look at it face on, then it's going to get worse and it's going to get wider. We're thinking, it's like when I had acne really, really bad one time when I was
Hmm.
growing up. And and somebody told me, until you go within and get your system together, even though you're a teenager and it may happen, and you also got to go outside at the same time in order for it to get taken care of. You got to look at what you're eating, you got to look at your water, and then you got to learn what not to use. Don't use any soap. Don't do this. This is what's making it, the chemicals and stuff. So this is what I'm seeing in terms of our environment. We're constantly thinking of force. We're constantly thinking, why are people raiding the schools? Why are the children taking guns into the schools? Why? Well, they gave permission for the children to not have to be penalized. Okay, and then the other, just look at what is really happening. Then your representative, somebody voted on people walking around with guns outside, didn't check their mental health status, didn't check whether they had harmed anybody before. They just said have guns. And what do we know about people who feel pressure? Well, I'm not going to get all on that. So here's where we are.
Yeah.
Because you sometime art, you could just go outside and walk along to beautiful murals, and they all have stories. But nobody is asking what brought on the mural in the first place. Okay.
Yeah. And when you talk about you know education and how does education impact all of this, um, one of my friends, an education guru, um, Tori Cofield, um, and then another, Tony Imani Fisher. Both of them have run schools, and both of them, they say one of the first things they do in the schools that they run is they have they don't call it a healing circle. I don't remember what the term is, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't start the day without everyone getting in the circle and just being able to kind
Be
of
present.
decompress from
Uh-huh.
whatever issues, drama, stress that
Mm-hmm.
these children may have endured at home. Because oftentimes, we forget that a lot of our children are going through incredible stresses that we wouldn't wish on anyone. And then they
Mhm.
come to school and we're expecting them, when the bell rings, to sit down, sit straight, and get to work. And it's really not possible. So um, those two sisters, they have it's a centering. Let's center ourselves. Let's breathe. Let's meditate. Let's do some movements.
Mhm.
Let's try to get in tune. Let's slow it down. It allows those children to recognize they are in a safe space with people who love, protect them, and have their best interests at heart,
Mhm. Mhm.
and just allows them to breathe. Sometimes you so busy and so stressed, whatever. Sometimes you just need to slow down and breathe for a minute,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
allows those children to do that. So I
Ye-
think that is important. But then it's what they teach and how they teach and how they
Yeah.
interact with the
Yes.
student.
Yes. I forgot to tell you that we have. What zip code are you in?
Um, the,
Your
the,
church.
the church is 77021.
That's right. So we have a free training to do breathing and mindfulness.
Have to
Okay.
do it. Have to do it.
You want to do it? Okay
Well,
then.
no, what I'm saying is it's all
It's a
of us.
have to do. But
We have to do it.
we're now able to train like groups that six or like children and parents at the same time in separate groups, and so we received a small amount of funding to do that, to teach them the word, how they use the word in order to refocus and whatever. But that's a part of that healing circle that you're talking about.
And culturally, meditation, movements,
Yes.
prayer, all
Yes.
these things are spiritual technologies. Like we're
Yes.
using technology now for us to even
Yes.
have this conversation.
Yes, that's right, and
Those
not
are
be in front of each other directly. That's
right.
right.
But
Hmm.
those are spiritual technologies that people that look like you and me created and gave to the world. Rituals are a set of spiritual technologies that created for the purpose. Our ancestors
Hmm.
said we need ritual because as human beings, we get so busy, we forget that there's a higher power, we get
Yes.
stressed, we get this, that, and the other. We have to have
Hmm.
rituals that allow us to slow
Hmm.
down and center ourselves. And so our
Hmm.
ancestors gave us
All of that.
all of these tools, but I'm saying it, and even I get so busy, I forget to do, or I'll say, oh, I'll do it later. And so when you say there's classes and there's trainings, we have to have that. We have
Yes.
to have that.
Hmm. 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 Which is really good. So now I want to go back to the education and culture. So when they were doing the healing circles, I wanted to ask the question: Are this particular school, aren't they involved also with a parenting something? Didn't they have did they infuse um, cultural history with the
All of it,
yep.
all of
Hmm.
it, all of it,
Hmm.
all of it. Oh, definitely. Um, the two sisters I mentioned and other educator friends of mine, they recognize that and it's little things that you can do to to recognize or celebrate a person's culture in the classroom.
Yes.
Like one thing you can do is create a classroom where everyone's sitting in circles instead of the quote unquote traditional.
Back to
The
back.
desks are all linear and everyone's facing the teacher, because even if you don't say it, there's a message being sent that there is an authority in the classroom
Yes.
that is pouring into or giving you all the knowledge. But from an African perspective, um, we education is not really a teacher pouring into the student, but rather the teacher's ability to draw out the intelligence that's already there.
Yes. Yes.
And the whole circle thing is a form of respecting each person's view and what they bring to the table in that sacred circle. And so there are little things like that. I there's this one example I wanted to share. Just the whole power of the group. There was this college professor. He's teaching math, and his Asian students are doing fabulous. His black students are struggling. He's really concerned. He doesn't know what to do. Um, And so um, he he says he asked some of the black students, well, can I? Is it okay if I observe what you do during a week so that I can see what's happening? And he found out that not only were the black students studying just as much as the Asian students, they were studying more. Yet their outcomes in the classroom were far below. But what he found was the Asian students, all of them to a person, studied in groups. They all got together and studied in groups, while the black students, each and every one of them, studied as individuals. And so this teacher then made it a standard practice of his classroom. Everyone has to be in a group, a study group. And after he instituted that, the grades of the black students skyrocketed. And
Uh-huh.
so just doing things like that. I mean, the circle,
Mhm.
the whole group dynamic of education, rather than the whole Eurocentric, it's all about you as an individual student thing. The little changes, little
Mhm.
cultural changes like that can create dynamic improvements in students.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's good. It's good to observe and see how all of that, how it works. You can even see it in their facial expression. But I wanted to also look at education and how it changes by looking at what people don't do in the classroom, looking at that person, but
Hmm.
also when the children get to the school, the education that occurs before they even get there was one. And the second one is how to connect the education to what's to connect what's before they get there in their home to the school. And these are two things that's falling, that seems to be falling. Everybody's saying it's not my job, you
Hmm.
see. And so what I wanted to see is in the past with history, what have you discovered yourself through your readings? Which is one of them I read. Okay, I read your books and I read passages I never see. I can't read a whole book. I can't. But anyway, I'm enjoying reading some of these books. And he was saying something about my glasses. Where are they? So when you were saying how different people perceive in your book and how they make statements and everything, this was about
Mm.
Randall, uh,
Hmm.
and how people's emotions um, can either be expressed or not expressed. Okay, and what impacts that? And then my thought was um, how people visualize things. When he tiptoed and different things, and so children that I'm talking to, young people, they begin looking at that when somebody's teaching them, they want them to talk in that manner. They want them to talk when they're telling them about history, telling them about educate math, history, whatever, to give it to them in a manner. Now, this is Latino, and African American for sure. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
hearing a lot about that. They want the talk to be descriptive enough that they can have a visual picture while you're speaking. But when you speak in such manner, like a linear thing, they don't bring into the concept,
Right.
you see. And so I want you to speak a little bit about what that means in terms of what you have discovered in terms of your writing, your research.
So what I have discovered is through researching history is that um, our ancestors recognized without writing it down that there are different learning styles and
Mm-hmm.
there are different forms of intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is no secret to folk in education circles. The different four learning styles: one is visual, one is auditory. So the auditory person, he or she can sit back and hear a lecture and get it. The visual person needs to see it. And if you don't have the graphics and the videos so that they can see it, you have to speak in a way, like you just said, so they can visualize it in their mind. And once
Hmm.
they can do that, they too can get it. But you also have, what do they call it? Kinesthetic learners. They,
Yes.
they have to,
Touch it.
the hands on, they got to touch it, they got to feel it, they have to do it. You can talk about it all day long, but until you put the chalk in their hand, I'm going old school, and they're back and they're on the blackboard actually having to write the thing out. Oh, that's when they get it. And then you have those who get it when they read. They don't, all that other stuff is just a distraction to them. I just need to sit here and read, or just to write it out, because literally in writing, there, I mean, I know, there's a whole thing where your
Memory where the
brain,
brain connects and the
where you
neurons. That's
get it,
right.
the more you write stuff down, like
Hmm.
taking notes as you're reading. And folk would always ask me, why are you always writing in your books? I didn't even know why I did it, but it helped me to get what I was reading. If I
Yes.
if I wrote notes down as I'm reading something. So there's those different learning styles, but there's also those different types of intelligences. And this is just my long-winded way of saying, um, in looking through history, I think we recognize that some people have musical intelligence, and others have spatial intelligence, and others have interpersonal intelligence. They
Hmm.
just know how to connect with people.
Hmm.
I was, my youngest son, he's a freshman in high school. He's a trumpet player, and I was sitting in on one of his sessions with his trumpet tutor, and they started talking in musical terms, and they very well could have been speaking Swahili or
Right.
French,
Right. Right.
some
Right.
language that I didn't understand. And I think I'm a, relatively smart person, but they're they're in the realm of that musical intelligence, and it was making
Hmm.
sense to them, and that's okay. It's just a recognition that we don't all learn the same way. We don't have the same
Hmm.
um, intelligences, but we all have intelligence. And I love the way I've heard different people say this. All of our children are geniuses. It's on us, the community, to figure out the genius that's in that child that's right in front of you, and help draw it out, rather
Yes.
than what our education system is too often guilty of, is not even recognizing that intelligence and looking at a child in one certain way. If they don't fit that formula, we label that child ADHD or special needs or
Right.
slow, or they're not on the college track. We label them all kinds of things, but they are geniuses. I mean, how many folk do you know ain't never been to college or barely finished high school, but they are geniuses in
Yes.
terms of being able to do this, that, or the
Yes.
other?
I do. Yes. Hmm.
We all,
Hmm.
we all have examples of that.
Yes. That's right. I like that way you put that. So I made me a note that that needs to be something that's emphasized to the parents of what they can do to locate the genius in their child.
And what you said needs to be emphasized to parents too: the power of storytelling.
Oh yes, I believe. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't just get up in front of a classroom and just, talk blah, blah, blah. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a class of 30, you may have three, four, or five that learn from that style. But then you are missing the majority of the classroom. But if
Mm-hmm.
you can bring storytelling, then you're allowing those visual learners
Yes. Yes.
to buy in as well. And if you incorporate not only the storytelling, but some activity,
Yes.
so that the
Music.
students, then you get
Uh-huh.
the kinesthetic learners.
Yes.
And then if you set them up in groups where you have all those different learners, they're
That's right.
learning from each other. But
Yes.
and so it's not just the teacher that's teaching, they are teaching themselves. It's a
I
whole
think. I
dynamic.
think. I think. I think a school would be a great idea to put. I mean, a learning school, a cultural learning school. I call it learning for success.
Mm.
Okay, then, and defining success as being whole. And so I think a school, and now I'm beginning to think that maybe it needs to be follow the pattern of being first and after school.
I didn't hear you.
And I think first now it seems that it's going to need to be an after school. Like after school would be the
Hmm.
beginning of it, and and that we need to take the leadership in the community to come up with pods of after schools that
Yeah.
would help parents and would help the children understand at the same time. And then that's when you begin to bring the culture together and start healing. But right
Yeah.
now, it seems, and you can comment on it, that we're over here putting these fires out. This and this, not that we shouldn't, or this is not a focus, but somehow we need to appreciate coming back and looking at what we used to do after school. Is we used to take, before they even got into the school in their early years, we would teach them not only the word or how to use it, but how to interpret things, how to think of themselves. And I could remember I went to St. James preschool. I remember
Hmm.
that. And they would have you, and they had the little, when you graduated before you went to school, you had the little white graduating cap and gown. You understand? But I remember all of the lessons
Hmm.
that they taught us and how we had to stand up and recite things, and we had to tell about something. We had to hold it. We had to, and they taught you how to sense, how to feel. Now people don't even have compassion. Nobody's taking the time. So all of this is into the culture that we're giving away or throwing away, um, or not appreciating in a sense, or not, maybe even not recognizing.
Yeah.
You see,
And that's why I appreciate the after school program at Shape Community Center.
I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the first things they do, they gather in the communitorium. That's what they call their big room. And the
Mm-hmm.
first thing they do is they get in that circle, that sacred circle, and they recite their mantras and their oaths that remind them that they're connected to each other and that they have
Mm-hmm.
a responsibility, um, to invest in themselves and each other, to respect each other. And then they have the different activities that allow them to not only finish their homework but to understand it. And they have young people that work with them, and then those after school folk, um, on, I think it's Tuesdays and Thursdays or one day, they are mentored by members of the Elders Institute of
Yes.
Wisdom.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you have that dynamic going as
Mm-hmm.
well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
showing deference and respect for elders and seniors. They have all the different programs going on. They have the arts going on, and so they're trying, not trying. What they are doing is they're
Yes.
meeting the needs of all the different styles of learners and all the different levels of intelligences, and it's community based, and it's beautiful.
And there's a guy that used to be I mean, he was active with us too at one time, and he was one of the associate pastors where you are. I can't think of his name, but he used to do sound with them. He even did sound with many of the churches in the community, and helped them which helped them bridge feelings and emotions through vibrations. And that was awesome. I really
You
would
talking
like.
about Baba Fana?
Yes. Uh-huh. And the children began to say that was the first time, especially those that had been abused, that was the first time that they had felt something outside of themselves, like feel the connection with
Wow.
something outside of themselves. And so I'm gonna try to follow up with him too, because that was very impressive, just to see the result of that. And the children who were cutting themselves at the hospital, they were in this particular group. Do you know that they stopped cutting themselves?
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's really a powerful testimony because he passed away about a year and a half ago.
Oh, did he? And I didn't get a chance to talk. I kept looking. He must have been sick or something. I couldn't find him. I
Yeah,
looked for him and he was on my mind maybe about 2.5 years. I was up on Alameda looking for him at the place
he
where
was in everybody's drumming circle, um,
yes,
always drumming, and he just had this laid back
he just
uh,
had it. He just, yes.
temperament about him, In fact, the class that he taught at our culture center, um, I'm teaching it now because
Or are you okay?
he moved on. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I miss him dearly. I mean, I have
yeah,
missed him for the last 2.5 or so years.
yeah,
But and I just couldn't, how you ask people, nobody said anything. No, I just couldn't find, just following the trail.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. But he did. He impacted a lot of people. That's what I know. Hmm.
Yep,
In a good way.
in a good way.
So if we were to then look at what are we going to say, um, what are we saying to the community? What are we saying to parents? What are we saying? One, that needs to happen, and two, what is it that we can do to make it happen?
Mm. It is to pay. I would say pay attention to how your child learns. Um, but before I go into anything, I think
I
we're
know,
joined
but
with
you
someone
forgot Mr.
who we'd
Mr.
love to hear
Mitchell
from.
Harris. We got him on, but we know what? You'll have to come back on next week if you don't mind. And
Yes.
but I do wanted to show you a book, and we talked about it a little bit, building a black house, and by Mitchell Harris. And on next week, if you don't mind, same time, we can really get into that. Today, he talked about what's inside of your book. He talked about in his book. He talks about how to power the appreciation within your home,
Mm.
and that kind, and really have a
Right.
lot of information in there. So and also looked at how I was just I didn't know that Malcolm X had such an impact upon how you thought and made changes in your life and whatever. So I know we're going to talk about it. I do want you everybody to meet Mitchell Harris, and you'll see him next week. If you be here, we'll be on with Reverend Dr. Wilson, and we'll bring it on and look at it that way in terms of the component. Reverend Dr. Wilson really he's upset because you're not on, Dr. Walker. I told him he can only do once a month, he said. So he said, we have
So we
to
can't
go.
hear from Brother Harris right now,
Say what?
and bring him back next week.
Say what?
I said we can't. I mean, he's right here. There he is.
I know, but they already done told me my time's up.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
So that's what I said.
and I don't even know what I did to get the camera working, so we have to figure it out.
You don't know what you did, but I have a lady in my office that can share a screen and show you
Okay,
what you need to do the next time. Okay. And I'll have her talk to you so we'll be ready to go next week.
that sounds good.
Okay, then.
Sounds
Oh, that sounds
all right.
great. That sounds great. So we're just going to give a few things about what we could do, what we need to do for education and to the impact on culture and changing culture that needs to happen. And then what can we do to make that happen? What's on us in terms of accountability? And
I don't have specific things, but I'll share an example. And I think if we work on ourselves to be more in tune with ourselves and with just the universe, that would help us. The reason I say that is because we had a child, a baby in our church, um, and so whenever the choir got up to start singing, this baby would go crazy, just smiling, laughing, singing, running around, jumping every Sunday. When the choir went, he would just, and so one of the ministers said that that child is just in tune musically. You need to develop that. And because somebody had the eyes to see it, then the community began to feed that child in that particular way. This young man ended up being this incredible musician, singer. He's also an intellect. He was like president of the Harvard Student Association. Just an incredible human being. But his path was helped because there were people around him that supported the passion and the gifts that he had. And I think if if we work on ourselves to be so inclined and so in tuned, we could see those gifts that those around us are sharing consciously or
Right, all the time.
subconsciously,
Yes,
and then be able to support them just like we need support, right? But
right.
that's my 2 cents.
Okay, and I didn't know if you heard everything we said or anything, Mr. Harris. And would you like to make any comment on how we can? We were trying to give a tip or two to leave the audience with that we could make a difference.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
mhm.
Absolutely. I can tell you that what we try to start out with when we're working with young folks and older folks is just changing your understanding of the way we live our lives. We've been conditioned and almost indoctrinated into believing that we should live by the values that we have in our American culture. What we try to do is tell folks that we need to live by principles. The principles we call it the principles of Ma'at, truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and propriety. And if that becomes the basis of how you see the world, then when you get values like money and family and relationships, they'll be in the proper perspective. So we have things kind of backwards. And America has put us in a position where we always get things backwards. We eat wrong, we think wrong, we worship wrong. Everything is always counter to the way we are naturally designed. So um, if we start from the basis of principles, I think uh, things will change. The problem though is we've been immersed in American values for so long, we don't even know that we don't know that we don't have principles. So uh,
That's true. That's true. That's true. That's true.
See, we have to hear from this brother because
That's
he's
what
talking
I'm
about
saying.
Mayat, which is the foundation of all the world's major faith systems, and
Oh,
folk
we
in
gonna
those
be
faith systems don't even realize it.
we trying to get him on. We trying to get him on so he can be. So I told you I want to do this forum, right?
yeah.
So we're trying to get him on. We got two. I'm waiting for this lady. You have a lady at your newspaper, and then it's one. It's I'm just trying to put people together. They don't have to have the same um, point of view, exactly. But I do know somebody that's concerned about what you call the glass, looking at trying to fill the glass. That's what I'm looking at, not looking at what we don't have, but looking at what we can do. And from that perspective,
But we do teach that the glass is always full.
it's
Sometimes,
always full. That's what I was trying to say, the full
sometimes
thing.
it's
We just don't
sometimes
see
it's half
it.
full of water, sometimes it's half full of air.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, then. Thank you so much. We're going to look forward. We know that Doc Walker will be back. He's the first um, Tuesday in the month. Any questions that you have for him from this point, he will then tell us the emphasis area, and you'll know ahead of time so that you can send in all the questions and answers. And we'll soon be hearing from Mr. Harris on next Tuesday at 11 Central Standard Time. Please tune in, and we'll hear more about. We're going to be looking more at the center and how spiritual development and knowing thyself fit into this topic. So we'll look at that. So please go to wrc-houston.com. You will see Doc Walker. He's scheduled in the month of April. He will be doing a webinar, and he knows he's doing one webinar, but he's been requested to do webinar series, and people are signing up, and we already have 6 people signing up. The purpose of this is to look at it from different vantage points, cultural aspects, and then whatever we learn in the first session is the foundation, and then everything we'll be looking at how that influences and what we can do. The live webinar, and then after the live webinar, then we'll have it on the website, and you'll be able to go on and register, but you won't have the interaction. You won't have the ability to ask questions. You won't have the follow-up dynamics as to how you can use it and things like that. But we're looking forward to that. So I'm just going to say any last moment, just I want to say thank you for being here. Um, Renew beliefs, rebuild faith, and reconnect families and communities. For it's not the circumstances we meet, it is the manner in which we respond that determines health, happiness, and success. So I look forward to seeing you all same time, same place, same station. Okay, God willing. Have a good one.
Yeah, have a good one. Take care.